Now, the fire extinguisher, who invented the fire extinguisher?
The invention of the extinguisher goes back way back to the Greeks because they invented everything. First extinguisher that was invented by Astroplebus, an odd name, but he invented this extinguisher. It was huge.
It's little known, but the Parthenon was really this fire extinguisher invented by wasn't that Astroplebus?
Astroplebus filled the jar with water, and it was huge. It was 50 feet high. It took so much clay to make this jar. And then when there was a fire, they said, Astroplebus, there's a fire over 1 kilometer from here. And he said, okay, good, I'll get my fire extinguisher, but no one can move the thing. It couldn't be moved.
That gave rise to the invention of the hose. That was another philosopher, right? That was Placenta, wasn't it?
Yeah, Placenta Frank, he invented the hose. He made that out of just a whole bunch of pig intestines. Because they didn't have any rubber, right? And so they just made this super long pig intestines. This led to the invention of the sausage. Let's face it, sausages are in fact just little short hoses.
What were some of the famous explorers that you'd like to emulate?
There was Big Red Eric.
Well, didn't he have a sidekick called Eric the Red Bottom?
He was always getting too hot because he was huge. They also called him Big Fuck Eric. And so he would always be getting hot and complaining. And so then he invented this vent in the back of his breeches,
a poo hatch.
And he would always control his body temperature like that. But he did it once on a sunny day and he got completely burned. And the nickname stuck.
Didn't he have an escapade with a hammerhead shark?
There would be the annual hammerhead shark wrestling competitions. Basically, you would just drag one of those fish out and then wrestle it. One of the women, they called her Marmalade Scrapper because she loved to fight. So, of course, they decided let her have a go at it. She always won. She was able to pin the hammerhead for the countdown, 10 seconds, and then there would be much jubilation.
Hammerhead sharks, they have great peripheral vision.
She would just come at it from straight on, singing the usual Viking drinking songs.
Hein ho, the Vikings go, and we all know.
Well, it was, yeah, we all know. And then it was like, here we are, we're on the shore, let's go and pillage and knock down a door, and then we'll have a drink in someone else's house, and we'll drink someone else's beer, and strike fear, and have a grand old merry time.
They really gave up on the rhyming scheme after a while with that song, didn't they?
Yeah, they didn't have the usual poetry sense that from the English language. It's a translation, remember. And God forbid that they started reciting their poetry to you. It'd be like, I am a Viking. I ride the snow on my snowshoes. I am brave and I am cold, and I will fish until I'm old. By God, give me your mead, and I'm moving in, so tell me what I need. And it would go on like this. They'd always start talking about themselves.
It kind of devolved into conversational prose, and it was pretty horrible. There's lots of commas and nested parentheses and square brackets.
One of their poems, after going for 15 minutes, and the guy's just sitting there, he said, have you ever had goat balls serenaded during the heat season? And the person who's tied in the chair would go, what are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. Then the Viking would get to, you're insulting my poetry. And then the poor victim would be going, look, why don't you just kill me? That's what your Vikings are supposed to do. And he said, no, I'm sick of killing. I'm now going to be an artiste. And then he would continue his poetry.
Going on. Yeah. And then he would say, this reminds me of the time my wife's next door neighbor accosted my husband's best friend and had an affair with him.
Yeah, Placenta Frank, he invented the hose. He made that out of just a whole bunch of pig intestines. They didn't have any rubber, right? And so they just made this super long pig intestines. This led to the invention of the sausage. Let's face it, sausages are in fact just little short hoses. Then, of course, Astrothesis, when he removed...
Wait a second, it wasn't Astrothesis. You're thinking of the guy who invented the screw. It's Astroplebus.
Oh, Astroplebus.
Yeah, Astrothesis.
Archimedes invented the screw. Astroplebus invented the big clay fire extinguisher, and...
Not Astroplebus. There's Astroplesis, Astrothesis, And Astroclevis is the new guy you just mentioned.
Oh, Astroclevis. Well, that was his brother. Oh, yeah.
He invented the concept of separation, didn't he?
Yeah, the separation of very large breasts. Astroclevis, he loved women's breasts, and he invented the bra. He liked to see breasts accentuated, and he wanted them separated. That's where the word cleavage comes from.
It's interesting they all had the name Astro. It was all prefixed by Astro.
I know. Well, they had a funny family. The kids all had the same first name, and they gave them a different last name. It got pretty confusing when it came to the birth certificates and stuff. And look at Placenta Frank. His name is all backwards.
Should have been Frank Placenta.
I know. Usually, I think that maybe 2,000 years later, people started switching it around because they could see that it was just confusing for most people.
With these pig intestines and the water coming from the fire extinguisher, which is basically a big urn, and the lack of water pressure, that led to the whole study of pressure, like by Archimedes.
Oh, yeah, they said, Archimedes, you got to help us. These idiots over here, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And Archimedes, he was a bit renowned, and because he only had one name, too, so they could keep track of him.
I think his name was Archimedes. His first name was Archie. His last name was Medes. That's the story of Archimedes.
Archimedes.
Yeah, it wasn't Archimedes. It was Archie, because his first name was Archie.
Oh yeah, Archimedes. Oh, wait a minute. I think Archimedes was lesser known than Archimedes.
Oh, they're two different people.
They're different people, yeah. Archimedes studied screws, and Archimedes studied water pressure.
Yeah, I had a good friend called it Reggie, didn't he?
Regioamoeba, I think. Regioamoeba didn't live long because he kept trying to study things in the water, in the ocean, and he didn't know how to swim.
Right. And this was before the invention of swimming.
It was before the invention of swimming. And so Archimedes, when he lost Regioamoeba, he became despondent and he said, that's it, I'm going to fight water. Water took my friend and I'm going to fight water to do my bidding. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And he tried to go out into the water. And of course, he couldn't swim either. And he almost drowned. So then he went out and he said, I'm going to try attacking water a different way. So he started becoming obsessed with water pressure, to be able to control water to do what you want it to do and not let water do what it wants to do to you. He put a big seal on the lid and then he started pumping with a big lever, pumping air into the container.
And this was Archimedes' lever. Archimedes invented the lever, but Archimedes invented the lever.
Oh, the lever and the lever. And then the poor victim would be going, look, why don't you just kill me? That's what your Vikings are supposed to do. And he said, no, I'm sick of killing. I'm now going to be an artiste. And then he would continue his poetry.
Going on. Yeah. And then he would say, this reminds me of the time my wife's next door neighbor accosted my husband's best friend and had an affair with him.
And then, of course, the poor victim, what else do? You try and educate this idiot Viking on how to properly recite poetry. And you'd say, like, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain, and where is my love? Her name is Jane. And then the Viking would say, it makes too much sense. How can poetry be good if it makes sense? It was a sad day for Vikings when the documents of this recited poetry were found and hadn't been destroyed. There was quite a bit of embarrassment, and many ancestors denied having anything to do with it. The CIA used it to break prisoners.
That helped terrorism end as well. Didn't they try to write some famous plays?
After they crossed the ocean and they did some raping and pillaging, one of them brought back a copy of Shakespeare's Hamlet. And then they read it and they decided that they could do a better job. One of the first performances was documented by their historian.
That was Eric the Mauve, wasn't it?
Eric the Mauve. And they had all their best actors that they could muster. The play was going okay for a while, but it was done during the annual thigh eating festival. They would eat the thighs of any animal they could find. It was a great feast, and they would eat while watching the play. And if they liked it, they would toss the bones onto the stage.
And if they didn't like it?
Well, then they would set fire to the stage.
In the end, every play was bad.
And they also decided that their plays would be well used to conquer new lands. First, there's the ghost of the sous chef, and he comes out and he's going, where is my chef? Where is my chef? And then out comes
Gridhelda Vicissitude.
Oh, yeah, she was one of the best actors there.
Yeah.
And then she said, "Come here, you look like my long-lost love, and I want to go fishing." And that would be the end of it. They had really short plays because they couldn't memorize lines very well. They were only 5 minutes, but by then everyone was so enraged that the stage was in flames and they were throwing bones. It was just a big brawl. He put a big seal on the lid, and then he started pumping with a big lever, pumping air into the container.
And this was Archimedes' lever. Archimedes invented the lever, but Archimedes invented the lever.
Oh, the lever and the lever.
A lever is a fulcrumless lever, I think.
Yeah, I heard they used to get into big debates as to who invented the lever and who invented the lever. Yeah, people said, "Why don't you guys shut up? It's the same thing." And they said, "It's not the same thing." And then they get pissed off at everyone, and then they were ostracized. It was so ironic because then they had to go live with each other.
Weren't they sent to Crete?
It was the island of crap where they sent argumentative individuals. They said, "We're going to send you out to the island of crap. We don't want to listen to your bullshit all day."
The old story, like the victor rewrites the history or whatever?
Yeah, the history is written by the victors. That saying was written by about 5 victors. It's just coincidence that there was these 5. They all had the same first name.
They said with the same problem as, Astro.
Oh, right. Yeah, the Victor was their last name, and their first name was Radish.
They're all Victor Radish, right? Clearly they had a self-interest. They wrote, "History will be written by the victors."
Of course, there was 5 of them, and they would just always argue who invented it. They said, "Well, who invented it?" It was Victor Radish. And they said, "But I'm Victor Radish." And they were all had the same stupid name. People got pissed off. They banished them to the island of crap. The 5 victors were out there, and along with Archimedes and Placenta Frank.
Were the Astros there?
Well, Astroclevis, he didn't have to get sent to the island of crap because big-breasted women were having back problems, and Astroclevis invented the bra, and they liked the bra. He had a good life. He was popular, and he also got to always look at cleavage.
Most people, if they look at cleavage, they get in trouble from their partners. Right. But for him, he could always say, "No, I'm doing research."
And he was doing research. He had copious amounts of papyrus notes. People would come and say, "Listen, I need to know something about cleavage." And he said, "I know everything there is to know about cleavage."
The history of Greece is...
It's endless. Greece, you can milk forever because they did everything first, it seems. And they didn't even have to have science. I mean, Aristotle, he envisioned atoms. How did he know anything about atoms? He just thought it up.
Well, he had a friend called Adam.
That's the thing. He gets credit for having thought that all molecular bonds and stuff are made out of atoms. But actually, he was an idiot. He just thought everything was made out of his friend Adam. He said atoms actually compose the structure of the world together.
But no one ever really put it to the test. They just assumed it was true.
Yeah, they just thought it was true because he was right about other things. But I'm not sure if this was Aristotle. This was probably Aristotle.
How do you spell it?
It was be Aris, A-I-R-S, and then Toddle, T-O-D-D-L-E.
Or that'd be heirs.
Aristotle.
He liked to benefit off the similarity of their name.
Well, he did. He would hide behind bushes and stuff and just make notes of whatever Aristotle said, and then he'd modify them so he wouldn't get charged with plagiarism. They were only 5 minutes, but by then everyone was so enraged that the stage was in flames and they were throwing bones. It was just a big brawl. The audience would just come with torches already burning, so they wouldn't have to waste any time trying to get a flame going to start the stage on fire.
Didn't they have Viking stand-up? And the jokes were really bad. They were like bad knock-knock jokes.
But the knock-knock jokes always had to be reenacted in reality. You couldn't just go up and tell a joke. It was really just an airing of grievances. They did a lot of good exploring, though. What they don't mention is the little stand-up stage that they built as well. If you were charged of a crime, they'd say, okay, you have to go and do stand-up, and if you're not funny, you will die. To this day, if a stand-up isn't funny, they say they died on stage. They were lonely, though. Where they landed, there wasn't a lot of people to subject to their stand-up and their bad plays. They would just start performing for each other. That's just like the snake chasing its own tail. They soon killed each other all off.
They'd all come to the show with a noose.
The mass suicides, and no one knows what happened to them. They say, where did all the Vikings go? What they don't know is, well, they were just terrible playwrights and terrible stand-ups.